Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for tuning in to us here at Manna from Heaven Ministries. My name is Brittany Scott, and tonight we're going to take a look at this week's Torah portion. And it never ceases to amaze me at how Yahweh, how awesome His Word is. Last night, as we've already been sharing, Brother David did not share on the Torah portion. He chose a different subject. And yet, in the studies, you see the same things. They line up, they go hand in hand. And when things like that happen, you know that Yahweh is in the midst of it and that He's orchestrating it and that this is a sent word directly from Him. The Torah portion this week is called Metzora, and it means leper. And if you've read this particular passage, I can promise you that you're going to see some things tonight that you will have not seen before. I've looked at this before numerous times, and He took me a different direction, one that was totally unexpected. And as I was studying this week, it was at the point that I gave myself a headache because I just couldn't understand. The things that He began to reveal were so mind-staggering that it just is so hard to comprehend. And we like to often talk about when you get too much information that you over-medicate someone. Well, I over-medicated myself. But tonight, hopefully, it'll be able for you to grasp because this is very important. And Yahweh is beginning to reveal things in His Word that have been hidden for thousands of years. And it's just such a time as this that He's beginning to open this. He's peeling back this layer and He's revealing these things for these end days because we have to grasp this. We have to understand the power that is in His Word if we plan on making it through the days ahead. So tonight, don't allow anything to hinder you from hearing this. Get your flesh under control. Listen to it again if you have to. But we have to get this because it is not a coincidence that He chose to share this with you. This is a sent word just for you. You were picked out, handpicked, and chosen to hear the deep, hidden revelation in His Word that few have heard before. This Torah portion, Metzora, as we said earlier, translates as leper. It covers Leviticus chapter 14, verse 1, through chapter 15, verse 33. If you were to read this in the English, you would think it has nothing to do with you today. You would automatically think, I am not a leper. I do not have leprosy. So these rules that talk about someone with leprosy does not apply to me, and you'd skip over it. Because in the English, it's hidden. You will not see what you see within the Hebrew language. And you would be very wrong because this has everything to do with us living in the end days that would comprise the bride. If you did not read last week's Torah portion, last week actually defined what leprosy was. How many of you realize there are times that we have to be reminded of what leprosy is and that we do indeed have it and that we do indeed need to deal with this? So he very clearly states exactly what the problem is because sometimes we forget. This week's portion, it picks right up where last week's left off. But in this week, he takes you a different direction concerning this leprosy. He tells you how you can be cleansed from it. That ought to make you shout. As soon as you see what this really is and how it has affected you, you will realize how powerful it is that He made a way for us to be cleansed from this, that we could be restored and made whole. Within this week's Torah portion, it then closes out in the final chapter, and it talks about a house that has leprosy, and then it goes on to a woman or a man with a discharge who is nidah. It would seem that this has nothing to do with the previous chapter speaking of this individual with leprosy. But as you will see tonight, these two topics go hand in hand. They're linked together within the Hebrew language. And if you were to read this in the English, you would see a physical ceremony that is carried out by the priests and the lepers that are coming to be cleansed. And it was that. It was a physical enactment that they were to go through. It was to cleanse them. Yahweh was teaching them how to keep the camp clean. He was teaching them how to stop the spread of disease. He was teaching them hygiene. But that's not all that He was teaching them. Every single physical ceremony, every sacrifice, everything contained here within these books of the Torah teach you not only something in the physical realm, but a deeper spiritual truth as well. There are things because of us in our fallen condition, we don't understand everything. We can't comprehend everything. So He gave us these physical reenactments to teach us these things, for our minds to be able to grasp what was really going on in the spiritual realm so we could see how our relationship is with Him. So tonight, we're going to go deeper than just the physical things that these lepers had to go through. We're going to look at the deep spiritual truths that Yahweh is truly attempting to reveal within this passage for those that will dig and those that will listen. Now, even in the English, if you've read this Torah portion, you can see that it's building. It's a progression. It starts off with one person who has leprosy. One person is infected. But if you'll notice, it then goes on to an entire house. The house has leprosy. And I was reminded, how much leaven does it take? It only takes a little. So he gives you this analogy. One person has leprosy. And if that one person's leprosy is not dealt with, it then leads to the entire house. The entire camp is now defiled by this leprosy. And if you were to look at when it talks about the house having leprosy, if this particular house had leprosy, they would go to the stones where this leprosy was, and they would remove these stones to fix the problem. Well, the word stone in Hebrew is eben. It's related to the word ben, meaning son or children. So now you can begin to see that there is a deeper meaning here, that when the entire house has leprosy, something has to be removed in order for this house to be cleansed. And he's talking about the individuals that have caused the problem in the first place. So now we can see why it's so important that we understand that we can be cleansed from leprosy. Because if we don't allow ourselves to be cleansed, we become the stones, the eben, that are removed from the house. And we're taken to an unclean place outside the camp. This finally culminates with a person becoming nidah. This is the last topic he chooses to discuss. Someone who is unclean, menstrually unclean is what this term means. And you may think, what does leprosy have to do with this state of nidah? But by tying this together within this Torah portion, he links leprosy and this idea of nidah. And we understand that we're the bride of Messiah. We understand that this state of nidah, whether you are a man, woman, or child, you can be nidah as well, spiritually in the eyes of Yahweh. And within this Torah portion, he ties together this thought for you, that a leprous house, a leprous bride, is a nidah bride. She is unclean. You see this same thing tied together again in Numbers chapter 12, verse 10, speaking of Miriam. It says, "And the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous." Well, we see leprosy, but you may say, I do not see the idea of nidah. You have to look at the name Miriam, and it's very clearly linked once again. The name Miriam is Strong's number 4813, Miriam, and it means rebellion. We understand that names are prophetic. They describe this individual and the way that they would live their life. And here, in this particular passage, Miriam lives up to her name. She rebels. So her name gives us insight into exactly what she was doing within the camp, rebelling. But if you break her name apart, not only do you see what she gets in trouble for, but you see the consequences of this rebellion. The name Miriam is spelled Mem, Resh, Yod, Mem. That beginning Mem, Resh forms the word mar in Hebrew. It means bitter. And upon the end of her name you have the Yod, Mem, which spells the word Yam, meaning sea or water. The bitter waters become the fate of Miriam. And it's interesting that here Miriam represents the nidah, adulterous woman. And she's made to partake of these bitter waters that are spoken of in Numbers chapter 5. But not only does she have to partake of these bitter waters, she also contracts leprosy. So as you can see, leprosy and now adultery go hand in hand. Leprosy becomes the symptom, and adultery is the cause. So as we begin to look at this Torah portion tonight, and we begin to break it apart, we understand now how important it is for us. Because if we are nidah, if we are unclean, we also have leprosy. And here he's giving you the antidote. He's telling you how to cleanse yourself from this. And we know that in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 27, it says that the bride will not have spot or wrinkle or any such thing. So if we truly are going to be part of this bride, part of the Kala, the one who is whole, complete, and perfect, then we have to deal with our spots. We have to deal with our leprosy. We have to allow ourselves to be cleansed. We must stop the adultery, and we must deal with the leprosy. This whole cleansing process spoken of here in Leviticus is not some ancient ritual. It's not something that has nothing to do with us today, but instead it becomes instructions. written exactly for you, written for those living in the end days that would seek to be part of the bride of Messiah, and it will teach you how to be set apart. It will teach you how to be cleansed and restored. But it's only if you take it back and you begin to delve into the deep meaning that's hidden here. This is your ticket to your cleansing. As we begin to look tonight at this subject of the leprous bride, and that very aptly describes the situation that most of us find ourselves in. We are in this state of leprosy. We're unclean. We have spots and we have wrinkles. So as we look at this, tonight you're going to see that you can be cleansed, but it's only if you begin to understand the power of the Hebrew language. And as I was looking at this, we often think, oh, we know the Hebrew language. We hear Brother David teach on it. We have Hebrew class with Miss Brenda. But it's so much more than that. As you begin to truly look at this, this is the language of the Creator. And what you're going to see tonight is how powerful this language truly is and what He built into His Torah and to the Hebrew language. And this is the reason that the Hebrew language has to be restored in the end days, because it's your ticket to your cleansing. In Zephaniah chapter 3, verse 9, it says, "For then will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may all call upon the name of Yahweh to serve Him with one consent." We understand that He's beginning to restore this language. But not only is He talking about speaking this language, He's talking about the full understanding of everything within this language. Everything that He has hidden for thousands of years, He's beginning to restore it. He's beginning to reveal Himself in a powerful way through His language. And the whole purpose here in Zephaniah chapter 3 for restoring this language is that we can serve Him with one consent. Now, in English, that means one thing to us. But if you take this back to the Hebrew, you're going to see a very powerful reason this language is being restored. The word one in Hebrew is Strong's number 259, echad. It means one or unity. The word consent, however, is quite different in the Hebrew than what you would think of in the English. The word consent here is Strong's number 7926, Shechem. It means shoulder or back. And we know that in the territories of the tribes of Joseph, there was a city called Shechem. So as we look at this word Shechem, we are to automatically think about Joseph, the 10 northern tribes, those that have been dispersed. And now you can begin to see the light bulb should be flickering. It should be beginning to light up above your head. The reason that this language has been so contested, the reason that it has been such an opposition against the restoration of this language, the reason it had to be hidden was because the restoration of this pure language, the Hebrew language, goes hand in hand with the uniting of the tribe of Joseph back into the house. That's why you see the Hebrew language being restored today. He's beginning to unite the two houses. The two sticks are becoming one. Without the language, it's not possible because there's something that is built in. It's encoded within His Hebrew language that would make the two one again. And as this house begins to be united and gathered, what you have, it's the bride. The bride is once again being assembled from all over, from the four corners of the earth, and she's preparing to meet her groom. And it's through his language that she's being cleansed, and it's through his language that she's learning how to prepare so that when she meets him, she will be pleasing in his eyes. And as you're going to see tonight, it's the restoration of this language that will cause you to be healed from leprosy, and it will cause your nidah condition to be transformed. This is the only way that you can truly fulfill Ephesians chapter 5. To be without spot, to be without wrinkle, is through the restoration of this language. So with that intro, we now get to the Torah portion. In Leviticus chapter 14, we'll go ahead and start in verse 1. It says, "And Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, that they turn and encamp..." I'm in Exodus. Told you. The opposition. But that's okay. I told you I over-medicated myself this week. No. In Leviticus chapter 14, starting in verse 1, it says, "And Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, This shall be the law of the leper in the day of his cleansing. He shall be brought unto the priest." And it then goes on to how the priest should deal with this leper in order for him to be cleansed from this leprosy. And we're going to focus